Check Podcasts.
Welcome to the Rising Economy Podcast, where leading thinkers, changemakers, and newsmakers discuss current issues and bold ideas impacting the economy and people of Greater Victoria.
Welcome to Rising Economy Podcast, brought to you by South Island Prosperity Partnership, Greater Victoria's regional economic development agency and the host of the annual Rising Economy Conference. I'm Carrie Slavens, and I'll be your host for today's Rising Economy episode, Vital Signs, Taking the Pulse of Our Region. We're podcasting today from Czech Studios, located on the unceded territories of the Lekwungen people, known as the Esquimalt and Songhees Nations today. Well, today my guest is Jonathon Dyck, Director of Marketing, Communications, and Community Engagement for the Victoria Foundation. And he's one of the driving forces behind the Vital Signs Report, an annual community checkup produced by the Victoria Foundation. I was pleased to attend the launch of Vital Signs 2023 on Friday, a great event at Victoria Conference Centre. Welcome, Jonathon.
Thank you for having me, Carrie. Really happy to be here.
Great to see you. And Jonathon, I understand this is the 18th year for Vital Signs. Wow.
It is hard to believe that it's been 18 years, eh?
Great. So you're getting quite a track record of data here to compare. First, I want to ask you, for those who aren't familiar with it, what is the Vital Signs Report, and why does the Victoria Foundation believe it's important to produce this yearly checkup?
Yeah, so the Vital Signs Report in Victoria started in 2006. So the Toronto Community Foundation was actually the first one in Canada to produce Vital Signs. And for our 75th anniversary, we decided that it was something that would be important for us to bring to our community. It's actually governed by Community Foundations of Canada, and they have standards that you have to meet to be able to participate in the Vital Signs program. And there's communities all over the country that do this. Each does it in their own unique way, depending on what their community needs are and what that information need is in that community. So for us, we've been doing this for 18 years. We do it annually. We find that it's really important to do the measurement of well-being in our community and do it in a sense of a report card. It's something that we can all relate to. It's something that going through school and other times in life, you know what it's like to get that report card and go, okay, these are the areas that we're doing really well. Here's some areas that we need to be able to improve. So we find that format works really, really well, and it's a chance for us to engage with the community and understand and listen to where are those areas of greatest need. And we know that it's used by organizations, by local governments, the province, the feds, locally, to be able to say, where are things at in Greater Victoria?
And I love the letter grades, by the way, because I do think it makes it so relatable. One of the other things I really love about it is that you always have stories that kind of exemplify a lot of the themes that you talk about. So you're highlighting local people and organizations, and it gives us a deeper look between the lines of the statistics of our community. I love that.
And that's something that's been really important to us with Vital Signs going through the 18 years. When you look back to the early editions of Vital Signs, they were actually using different methods of looking at the indicators. How they graded the indicators was a little different. And then I believe it was about 2013 that we shifted to the letter grades. And so it's something that we have gone through evolutions. But one thing that hasn't changed, and something that's really important to the Victoria Foundation, is making sure that this is a report that is easily consumable. So it's not so dense that it's challenging for people to understand, and it does have that magazine feel. We do refer to Vital Signs as a program now because we have a number of different components to it. We have the magazine, we do have our citizen survey data on our website, but we also have the digital platform, which is graciously sponsored by the South Island Prosperity Partnership, which is updated throughout the year with data as it becomes available. So it is something that within Vital Signs we have seen evolutions of this data, but the important part is the storytelling and those aspects of it to connect to each issue area and then our overall theme for the year.
It's just it's a great production. And so this year, can we talk a little bit, how many survey respondents did you have this year? Where are they from?
Yeah. So this year, we actually had a record number of survey respondents. So this year, we had 5,319 people complete the citizen survey.
Great.
Our closest, which is our second best year, was 3,700 respondents, and that was back in 2021. So one of the things that we found was this year we changed the format of the survey. So we had a short form and a long form, so people could choose which way they went. We had 80% of those do the long form of the survey.
Interesting.
Yeah. So
I love doing surveys, so I'm all in. I did the long form.
Oh, that's awesome. We're really glad to hear it. And so glad to hear that you're one of those 5,319 people. I think that, for us, it's really important to look at that and make sure that we're engaging as regionally as possible, because we do cover the capital region. And it's something that we want to get as many responses from as many people
For sure.
as we possibly can with that citizen survey. So we do have 400 people, approximately, I believe it was 402 this year, that come from a panel that is operated by Leger. So that's their Leo panel. And we do that so we can see where the results may differ. And what we find is that actually between those interested in the survey from Greater Victoria, which is our methodology, it's those interested because we put it out through our channels, social media, traditional media, organizations share it out. We're very proud of how the networks that we work with share this out. But we do find, and Leger will tell you, it is interested Greater Victorians that have completed that survey, and then also this panel. But the differences are not that huge between what we find. So
how interesting. And in terms of the methodology, do you have roughly an age breakdown, and what are the demographics like on it?
Yeah, so we do, and it's actually all at the back of the Vital Signs report if people want to pick up a copy at victoriafoundation.bc.ca or across the community. And actually, if you dive into the full data report, there's even more in there if you're so inclined. So age range 18 to 30 was 16%, 31 to 44, 27%, 45 to 54, 14%. 55 to 64, 14%, and 65 plus was 30%.
Wow.
In terms of gender, it was a breakdown of 52% identifying as female, 46% as male, and then 3% as non-binary or other. So
right. So that's a generally pretty good representation, and probably it grows and changes and, over the years as a reflection of who's living in this region and how we're evolving our thinking. Can you just tell me, before we jump into the report, which we're going to do right away, how does this inform what Victoria Foundation looks to fund? How do you have Victoria Foundation use the report?
So we use a report in a number of different ways. One of them is that it does help us set the priorities for the Victoria Foundation. So our board and staff take it very seriously. They look through and they go, okay, what are those priority areas that we need to be paying attention to? And then it does help us with our granting. So for our community grants program, that is one of the pieces that it looks at is, okay, where are those great areas of greatest need? And then we have a number of things that feed off of this. Vital Youth is a program that we operate with 11 high schools around Greater Victoria, including one that's just up the Malahad. And it's something that they use Vital Signs as one of their tools to use. Vital Conversations come after this, and we were proud to work with the South Island Prosperity Partnership at your Rising Economy conference last year to host a panel. That was our Vital
And again this year, we'll have to pick our topic.
100%. And so we use it for that. We also utilize it through a number of different channels that we have and our podcast, of course. So I think that this isn't a document that sits still. It's something that once this part of the document and the program is done and we've released it, it's something that then we want to continue that conversation and make sure that we're not just sitting back and saying, okay, this is what we know. That we're actually moving things forward.
That's fabulous. So speaking of moving things forward, the theme of this year's report is From Hope to Change. Can you tell me why that theme was chosen?
Yeah, so one of the things that we find is that with the Vital Signs report, or a lot of things in life, you look at it and you go, okay, this was really good or this is really challenging. And you come out of that with a little bit of hope and saying, okay, how can we do this? What can we do to be able to do that? But hope only gets you so far. Hope is that outwardly looking piece of like, I hope this can improve, or I hope that this will happen. But if we can move that from having that hope into actual change that's lasting, that really makes that difference, we're going to have a very successful community, an even more successful community than we have today. And so I think that that's really where this theme came from. We're dealing with a number of significant challenges as a community.
Huge.
Some are unique to the South Island. Some are national or international in scope. But it's something that if we do want to see things improve, we do have to look at what are those changes that we can make and what is in our control to change as a community, as a region, to make that happen. And one of the examples is through physical literacy. And so our feature story, which is up on our digital platform, is about the Pacific Institute for Sport Education.
Oh, fabulous, yeah.
And so talking about how physical activity and physical literacy does move from hope to change. And that's our example as to how we use that, is because sometimes you hope that you can get physically better. Sometimes you're sitting on your couch saying, okay, I hope I can do this. But it's different once you start going and working at it. And
Absolutely.
Your first day, you might feel like your lungs are going to be bad. But it's something that, eventually you do see those improvements. And so if we take that as a metaphor for what we need to do as a community, I think that can really help us move these issues forward.
That's such a good point. And, hope without action leads to what? Despair.
Yeah.
So I think you guys nailed it, particularly for the times we live in. And as you say, with the challenges we're facing. I mean, so now we're going to look at this a little bit. And before we get into the grading part, what did those surveys choose as the best things about Greater Victoria, about life here? Let's look at maybe the top 5.
Sure. So the top 5 this year were natural environment, climate, air quality, parks, and walkability. And I think that when you step outside in Greater Victoria, the fact that you're not that far from a beach and the ocean in any part of this region, I mean, it's quite remarkable.
Yes.
When you look at, how things move between seasons and the weather, I mean, I don't think any of these are really that much of a surprise as to the beauty and why people want to be here and why they think that's the best.
Yeah.
I'm going to cheat a little bit here and go down to number 6 because I
Yes.
think it's important, which is friends and family. And I think that when you combine those two things between the beauty and what we have to offer here for natural environment, climate, and those topics, and friends and family, I think that you really see the value and the benefits of our region.
I think you're right. And I know during COVID, so many of our social relationships, especially the incidental ones, really suffered. And then we saw the impact on mental health and that. And for a lot of us, the only way we got to see a lot of people was walking around the block, getting outdoors and actually seeing each other. So these are great. Now, what are we seeing as the most important issues that are facing Greater Victoria?
So the most important issues, it was interesting last year because we had a tie between cost of living and housing. And this year, our top issue was cost of living at 68% of respondents said that was a top issue. 62% said housing. And then you had homelessness, healthcare, and addictions to round out the top 5. So one of the things and that we have been talking about internally around cost of living is that cost of living is so much bigger. And I think that all of us are feeling it no matter where you're going.
Yeah.
If you're going to the grocery store, if you're going out for a night of entertainment, if you're using any type of transportation, it's a big piece of our lives right now.
Bet.
It's a real challenge because everything feels like life is costing more. And I think that when you look at housing, that's a huge part of it. Like I don't want to minimize the fact that housing has a really big impact on cost of living, but I think it is that separation between the two and just how people are feeling about cost of living now and where that's at. So those were our top 5 for 2023.
That makes a huge amount of sense. And of course, just about all of these things. And then if we add, the next one down here, we've got mental health, climate change. But all of those things are kind of on if we look at the old Maslow's hierarchy of needs of what we need to feel secure and develop our sense of being in the world, those are the core to us. So when we look at, people and mental health issues, insecurity and that, there's a lot of pressure on people right now, right?
I would agree. I think that part of where we're at right now is that all these issues are very interrelated. It's going to be when you look at the most important issues, it's going to be hard to address one without addressing others.
Yeah.
Like these need to be multi-solves as they're called, so we can look at how do we bring these all together and figure it out as a community and as a region to move forward. And I think that these are challenges, and you look at healthcare as one of them. I think that we look at where we're at as a community, and we'll get into some of the other statistics in a bit. But we need to find ways that we can address these as a team.
We sure do. And, so many of them, we're probably on their way to breaking before COVID, but it really exposed the fractures in the system and how fragile our systems were, because so many of them are systemic things and big problems that one person can't solve on their own. So you're seeing probably in a lot of the work you do, there's a lot of community collaboration happening, right? Just so we can talk about the sense of hope here. A lot of people are working on a lot of these issues, right?
100%. And I think that, and this year, just going back to our vital conversation. So last year we had an F in housing, and we had those housing and cost of living as our top two most important issues. And one of the things that we wanted to do was we know what the issues are. I think that when you talk at a coffee shop, if you're talking at your dining room table, if you're talking at a boardroom table, if you're having lunch with friends or colleagues, this isn't a surprise. Yep. The issues are known. And so one of the things that we want to do with the Vital Conversation was really take the excellent panel presentation that was done with the South Island Prosperity Partnership, and then get a group of people into a room and go, well, what are some of these solutions? What are some of the things that we can talk about, rather than rehashing what all the problems are and just sitting here? What can we give people hope to be able to move? And so we had that conversation. We just released our digital report about it. And then we also had Spark funds that went out, and they're not, it's not enough money that's going to solve the housing crisis. It's not enough money that's going to solve, because one organization can't do this alone. But I was looking at how organizations are doing that great work, and how they can work together and band together to be able to do that.
Yeah.
And so those are really great examples of work that's already happening that just needs that ability to push forward, and just needs that bit of, we have the hope. Now let's make the change.
And one of the things I think you do well is talking to just the people that live here, just ordinary people, because the most remarkable solutions and observations arise out of people who aren't trying to solve the big problems. They're maybe trying to solve little problems in their communities, and they end up solving bigger issues, thinking about people, taking a portion of the street and painting a mural for the kids, to play, handling safety issues. So I do feel encouraged that there's a lot going on. So when asked to rate their overall quality of life in Victoria, the average grade was
a B.
B.
Yes.
Not bad. Room for improvement, but not so far down that you feel hopeless about it. Do you want to break that down a little? Top 5 things to address to make Greater Victoria a better place to live?
Yeah. So I think that one of the interesting things about the B grade this year is that we come off 2 years of having a B plus grade. So in 2021, 2022, it was a B plus, and the year before it was a B after a string of B pluses. So it's really fascinating how that has shifted down again in 2023. So down to a B. Not a huge change, but it's still an indication of where things are at. And, I think that part of it last year was, and this is something for some of the issue areas as well, that people were feeling hopeful. When we did this survey last year, it was May and June. People were really looking forward to that summer. They're really looking forward to reconnect. This year you have high interest rates. You have a lot of pressures on people that we were just chatting about. So I think that all played into it in the spring and where it's at. And then you look at the top 5 things to address to make Greater Victoria an even better place to live. Affordable housing, more rental units was number 1. So that ties directly into those 2 most important issues. Social issues, including mental health, homelessness, improving public safety, improved public transportation, and more affordable cost of living. So, I think that there is room for us to grow. I think that we can be very proud of where we're at as a community in terms of that B, and I don't think we want to lose sight of those things that are good that we want to protect or enhance when we're doing well. At the same time, I think that there are areas that we can continue to work.
You bet. One of them, obviously, where there's room for improvement is diversity, equity, and inclusion in Greater Victoria. So B minus this year. So what do we attribute the B minus to? Where do we have room to improve here? What aren't we doing right?
I think that when you look at diversity, equity, and inclusion in Greater Victoria, and I just recognize that I'm a cis white male, so I just like to recognize that as well. But I think that when you look at the survey respondents and what they're saying, you have 56% identify as Black, Indigenous, and people of color feel respected living in Greater Victoria. And in our launch 2 years ago, it was the first time that we'd included this diversity, equity, and inclusion section. And so Dr. Fred Chu from the University of Victoria made a really interesting point that says, 56% are saying that they feel respected, but then there's 44% that don't.
Yeah.
Or that don't to some degree. So it's something that behind each of these numbers, there's a person.
Yes.
And so I think that that's something that's really key to think about when we're going through this, especially for those groups that are equity deserving and that may not have always felt this way. What are we doing as a community to make sure that we are creating that sense of belonging for everybody and making that work? And I think that that's one of those stats that really stands out to me.
Well, we have is certainly a long ways to go. And I know that one of the things on the note of hope, not complete solution solving, but the recent powwow hosted by the Songhees drew in an incredible number of people. And I think events like this are helping us all learn the real stories that we need to know underneath the surface and understand and bring us face to face with people. I mean, Victoria has changed a lot since I've moved here, and it still has a long ways to go for sure. So it appears we're on the path, but we're not there yet.
I would agree with that. I think that there's, just looking at the powwow, looking at, if you ever get the chance to do one of the Lekwungen walking tours.
Oh, it's
downtown,
so fabulous.
There's just so much. And we do have the oldest Chinatown in Canada. So I think that we have a lot of those pieces. And the Chinese Museum is unbelievable in that space. So I think that there's a lot of great things in this space and a lot of learning in that. I think that, for me, one of those pieces is that sense of belonging and making sure that, no matter who you are living in Greater Victoria, that you feel like you belong.
Yes.
And that this is home for you.
Yes, that's a really good way to put it. Well, let's move on here and get into the report. Arts and culture, a topic dear to my heart. We got a B in that, so we're up there. We're more than passing. Any highlights here you really want to address, Jonathan?
So one of the things in arts and culture that I think was really interesting was the stats from the Greater Victoria Public Library that they had 3 million total visits last year, but their actual in-person visits were up. So they had 1.1 million from their 2021 stats. They had 1.4 million in person last year. So I think that just, when you look at culture, when you look at vibrancy of a community, I just thought that was a really interesting statistic that stood out to me in this section.
I agree with you. And, I read a quote somewhere that talked about libraries as the important, I don't think it was the conscience of the community, but kind of the heart of the community, and that communities without libraries were all the poorer for it. So kudos to, our library system here, and I can't believe it. This is great that more people are going.
Oh, 100%. Well, and I know that we, as a family, we go to the one at Perks in Saanich, and the kids, a library is just such a vibrant place. They'll go and play with the blocks that they can jump on and have fun. They have the magnet block builders that you can play with. So it's, it's not just about going and taking out a book and leaving. A library is really a vibrant place for a community, and so many services that I think are underappreciated in our library system and what is offered throughout the region from both the Vancouver Island Regional Library at their 2 locations in Greater Victoria and also the Greater Victoria Public Library System. So.
Well, and what I love, Dallas Gislason, our Director of Community Economies at South Island Prosperity, actually wrote a recent article in Douglas Magazine in which she said our arts and culture sector is actually bigger than our cruise ship sector. And a lot of people don't realize just how infused with arts we are in this community. And when you talk about belonging and engagement, of course, it all ties in, doesn't it?
Oh, 100%. And I think we are very fortunate living here to have great facilities. And I know that there's always work for improvement, but even just look at the different opportunities there are. And I mean, I think of Belfry Theater as one.
Yes.
And then, I mean, Scam Theater, how they have their truck that they go around and do. I mean, just the creativity that's available within this city is remarkable, and from all levels, from all areas.
It's phenomenal. I love it. It's one of the reasons I moved here, and I love that it continues. So belonging and engagement got a B-. And what was it last year, the previous year?
So belonging and engagement the previous year, just 1 second here, was also a B-, so it remained the same.
So it stayed about the same. So where are we succeeding? What's bringing it down to the B-?
So I think that one of the areas is, 63% of survey respondents strongly agreed or someone agreed that they felt included within Greater Victoria. But they were more likely to give it this grade if they were female, if they were white, if they were living in the city for over 10 years, and if they had an annual income over $80,000.
Yeah.
So when you look at those factors, I think that, again, it's really key to think about, okay, this is a good grade. There's room for improvement, but who can we really think about to be able to make this more better for everybody in our region?
Because if you can't afford to go to, some of the yoga classes and different things out there, I mean, and you don't feel like you see yourself represented, then you're less likely to go, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So I'm glad that you brought that up. In terms of one of the things I found interesting on here was police reported hate crimes. So down from 2021. So down from 10.4% to 8.4%. And, I think a lot of people would probably think that that's rising. But...
Yeah, and I think
surprise, it's not.
And I think that one of the things, and just below it does, one of the things that points out is hate crime rate in the region is up from 2018, 33%. So I think that that's really important. And I know that Del Manick from Victoria Police, who's one of our subject matter experts, would likely have more to delve into. And we do have a reel with him talking about some of the interesting pieces in the report from his perspective. And I do think that when we look at that second stat of up 33% in the last 5 years, that is concerning.
It is very concerning.
And it's something that when you look at belonging, that you want to make sure that people feel safe and that there isn't that concern.
You bet. We've got a ways to go. Economy. Well, there's one near and dear to my heart.
I don't know if I can offer anything in this one, Carrie. This is from the South Island Prosperity Partners.
I don't know if I can either. Actually, you know what? The economy. Well, I mean, we're coming out of the pandemic. We are emerging.
Yeah.
A lot of sectors have recovered. We're still seeing some, warts, and some sectors were fairly devastated. But it's really interesting. Of course, we seem to veer between extremes in Victoria. I mean, we've got this super low unemployment rate. So, our problem isn't necessarily getting jobs right now, at least for a certain sector. It's finding people, keeping them in jobs so that our economy can flourish. And also, as you know, housing has been significant especially in terms of getting essential workers in Victoria. But it's very interesting here. You talk about, the elements of the economy, how many hotel rooms, our hotel occupancy rate up this year. What else?
Well, so it was very fast, and I'll just talk about the unemployment. You mentioned the Stats Can unemployment rate. And so one of the things that we found in our citizen survey was when we asked people, how would you rate your ability to find suitable employment? Anybody that was 18 to 30 was more likely to give that a D grade, and males were more likely to give it an A grade. So just putting some perspective.
Yeah, thank you for that. So again, it's all depends where you are.
Yeah, well, and just onto the transportation piece. I mean, it's so nice to see on those 8 indicators that are on here, the arrows going up.
Yeah.
We know the challenges that the tourism sector and us as a community have had over the last number of years. And so it's really nice to see that going up and being able to really celebrate that. And I know that Destination Greater Victoria just got a great award last week.
They did.
I think that is something that's going to be really key for us.
One of the things I would point out, just because I do, of course, work with South Island Prosperity, during the pandemic, a lot of people may not know that we convened one of the largest non-governmental responses in Canada to look at the economy, what was happening with it, and to pull people together and try and collaborate to get it on track. And all of that collaboration, I think, has really boded well for our community. So, it could certainly be worse, but C+, we're holding our own.
Well, thank you for all the work that you folks are doing. It's really incredible.
Environmentals and sustainability, a B.
A B. So
Yeah.
There's 3 issue areas that received a B. This was one of them. And so, when we talked about the top 3 things that are the best things about Greater Victoria: natural environment, climate, air quality. I mean, that all factors into this. One of the concerning things is the drought conditions. And,
Yeah.
I think that when you read the statistic that 27 of BC's 34 basins were at level 4 or 5 this year, it's a challenge, and it's something that we really need to keep our pulse on.
It really is. Yes. And here in our City of Gardens, of course, I notice there's lots of innovation going on
Yes.
in terms of looking at how we can keep our city looking great. And of course, looking great is not as important as making sure necessary things get the water. So
100%.
I love this category, getting started.
Yeah.
A C. So what is the category about, first of all? Who are we talking about getting started?
So for getting started, it's helping children, youth, and newcomers to get a good start in life, work, adulthood, or our community that makes a lasting difference. So that's who we're
Right.
talking about in this section, and a really great story from the Children and Family Services Program about their work and supporting moms in Souk. So really great story there.
That's awesome.
The one thing that stood out to me here in this data and the Statistics Canada data, and something that will need to be looked at further, I think, is the immigrant retention rate. So when you look at of immigrant tax filers in 2020 who continued to reside in Greater Victoria 3 years after choosing to live here upon admission to Canada, 75% were still here. And so that means that 25% weren't. Where they went to, those type of pieces, we're not sure. That's similar to 2018 and 2019, so it's not like it's changing all that substantially down. But, when you look at 90% in British Columbia and 87% in Canada, I think that's something that, I think that goes back to that sense of belonging. And there
That's
are
right.
questions around that. And I think that there's experts that can answer those probably better than I can. But it's more a matter of that's something that when I looked at the report that really stood out to me from the Victoria.
Because that's a quarter that don't stay.
Correct.
That's significant number of people we could really use here as part of our community. And you were saying more study needs to be done on this, and
I'm sure that there's, from our subject matter experts, that they would be able to provide more context as to what this is. But it's just something that when I'm looking over the report from Victoria Foundation perspective, it's something that just stood out to me as an interesting piece of the data.
And I was also looking at children and youth in care here. So, wow, 62% Indigenous. That's another thing that, are we going to see that shift, do you think, over time as more and more nations begin to want to bring care back to the nations?
I sure hope so.
I guess you're not an expert. It's not fair to ask you.
Well, I think that, this is one of those pieces when you're looking at truth and reconciliation, the work that's being done. And again, going from hope to change, that is something that needs to be changed. And, there are wonderful organizations in our community that are working to address these types of challenges.
Right.
And so I think, I look at the work that's done by Jennifer Chakri and her organization to be able to look at that and how do children stay within that Indigenous culture and be able to work. So I think that there are those pieces. It's just a matter of really trying to, as a community, really supporting that, and making sure that that's taken care of.
Health and wellness, this is always a big subject to talk about. It seems like every time I'm out for a coffee, the number of doctors in the region is a big topic of discussion. So what are the highlights here, Jonathan?
So it is an interesting grade, and actually I had somebody today say, how did that rise last year? Because it went from a C+ to a B-.
I wondered too.
And so they were asking about that. And while I don't have a definitive answer because I can't talk to all 5,319 people that did the survey, what I can say is that I think that this partially, again, has to do with timing. So when you look at when we did the survey last year, still lots of uneasiness around COVID when we were trying to reopen pieces, when people were trying to travel again, reintegrating. Whereas, for me, this spring, it felt very different. And you look at events, you look at people out, you look at all those type of things.
Right.
That doesn't diminish the fact that we do have significant challenges in a number of areas under this category. So, one of them is average wait times, according to Medimap. 137 minutes in Greater Victoria compared to 79 minutes in British Columbia and 37 minutes in Canada for walk-in clinic. Again, walk-in clinics aren't a solution for longitudinal primary care, but at the same time, that does really highlight some of those challenges.
I've noticed there's not many left either.
No.
They're closing down at a rapid rate.
Yeah, it is. And I think just overall the access is a real challenge. When you look at the citizen survey, poor or below average receive 56% of responses for ability to access physical health care in a timely manner. 55% of response said the same for ability to access mental health in a timely manner. So some real strong feelings around this topic.
Exactly. And there's information on here on unregulated drug deaths. We won't go into that today, but it's significant. Alcohol consumption, we do drink a little more here.
We do. That's one stat. Estimated annual alcohol consumption per capita in 2022, 10.6 liters. South Vancouver Island, higher than the BC and Canada average in 2021.
Yeah. For probably all kinds of... One of the things I did find quite surprising was childhood immunizations. I thought we'd be higher on that. So 78% of 2-year-olds were up to date with routine immunizations. BC rate 73%, so we're above that. 65% of 7-year-olds were up to date with routine immunizations. Provincial rate 69%. I don't know why, but I thought with all the education and everything in British Columbia, we would be higher.
Yeah.
Housing got a D, but as you said, it's up from an F last year. That was the first F, right?
That was the first F, and it still is the lowest grade within our vital signs report.
So why do you think it came up?
I think that, and I've had a few conversations about this, about why this grade may have come up, and some of it that was said was maybe it has to do with that there is some hope that there's going to be change when you look at what's happening at the provincial government level, when you look at what municipalities are doing. When you just look, there is hope. When you look at the median sale prices, and we always use May 2020, the month of May, just so we keep consistency. You're not using May and then September and that in the report. But all three categories for median sale prices were down. Having said that, the median sale price for a single-family home was still $1.17 million. So I think that's a real challenge and something that you see that. And then when you look at average rent types or average apartment rent in October 2022, $1,467 for all unit types, up 7.5% from 2021. So, this isn't something that we can just let slide.
No, we can't.
This is a big community issue that all of us have a part to play in, and we all need to figure out how to do this because it affects our friends, it affects our families, it affects our colleagues. So it's something that this isn't one that we can just sit on the sidelines and decide that we're going to sit out of.
No, for sure. I see here too, starting to build, we need 3-bedroom apartments. We need places for families. We need bachelors as well.
Yeah.
We need just about everything. And the gross shelter cost to income ratio, 17%. So 17% of owner households in Greater Victoria spent more than 30% of average total income on shelter. That's mortgage, property taxes, and all of that. So then the cost of living really comes into play, doesn't it? As we see food prices rise and it gets tight.
It does. And then people have to make tough choices. And especially
Right.
those that, when you look at it, you have all different types of people in our community, but it does put pressure on people as we go.
Yeah. I noticed from here we got a B in learning. We're a real learning region, aren't we?
We are, yeah. I think that when you look at the citizen survey data for this section, one of the things was that access to quality education, 66% said good or excellent. So I think that it is something that we do have a great system within Greater Victoria. There's always room for improvement, as there is everywhere. But I think that this is an area that we can be proud of.
This gives me a lot of hope.
Yes.
The learning, the safety is one that, again, is, a lot of conversations around safety, given some of the issues. But overall, we have a C+.
Yeah.
So, despite, thinking about, crime and all of this and the anxiety on the rise about things, we're still considered a relatively safe city, would you say?
I think, and one of the interesting pieces that dropped from B plus, a B minus to a C plus. So I think that to answer that question, it would depend on who you ask. And I think that it's really dependent on the person, on what their experiences have been, what they've been feeling. So, one of the fascinating things is that this was the third most important item to make Greater Victoria a better place to live. And so when we look at this, though, that there is disparity between groups, and when you look at the numbers within the citizen survey data, there are groups that are more affected, including the BIPOC community. And,
yes.
Del Manick did say when he did our reel that that's something that we really have to take seriously, and something that we need to make sure that we're making people feel like they belong, that they feel safe, and that they are safe within our communities.
Exactly. And I was just part of a conversation with a group of women and men around the dinner table at Thanksgiving. And one of the women brought up what women do when they go to get into their car if they're in a parkade or somewhere, the steps they take. And it's quite dramatic, whereas many men, not all men, because some men are part of, communities that really do worry more about safety. But it's just really interesting, looking at the different ways we approach things. Overall, our crime rate is down. But violent crime is up. So
and sexual assaults are up as well.
Sexual assaults are up.
Just as a, and I know that Del Manick was talking about this again. He's one of our subject matter experts that talks about this, and part of this is increased reporting, which is a good thing. And so, if people are feeling more safe to report, if they can get into the system and do that, then, but you never want anybody to go through anything.
For sure. Sports and rec. You talked a little bit about, physical literacy. So it's a B this year. What was it last year? Is that the same?
So sports and recreation actually was a B plus last year. So it did drop by, we removed the plus from it. But I thought that one of the great things on here was that there was a data from Kids Sport Greater Victoria, and 84% of children said that they will stay in sport for sure. So I think that is such a great statistic, that this does have an impact on lives, and it can impact the way that people operate. So.
Exactly. And standard of living, B minus. We can see a lot of reasons for that. But what stands out to you, Jonathon, about this section?
So the thing that really stood out to me was the living wage at $24.29.
Yeah.
That is something that when you look at that and when you think about that amount of money per hour that people need to be to maintain adequate quality of life in the capital region, that's significant. I don't know what the minimum wage was when you were growing up, but for me it was $5.90 in Alberta, and that's not a livable wage either. But it's something that when you look at $24.29, from my perspective, that is something that that when you look at cost of living, that's directly tied.
Exactly. So full-time minimum wage worker earns $16.75 an hour in BC, or $30,485 a year pre-tax.
Yeah.
Wow. Compare that to the living wage, $24.29 needed to live in this city.
Yeah.
Transportation C plus.
Yeah.
Not too bad. Increasing numbers of people going by transit. Lots still by car. Hey, 74%.
Lots still by car. And then when you look at the stat from BC Transit about vehicle availability at the bottom of page 33 of our Vital Signs report, in 2022-2023, households in Greater Victoria owned or leased an average of 1.6 insured motor vehicles. And that's on par with previous years, but lower than the household average in BC at 1.7. But I think it is an interesting stat that, there is still almost 2 cars in every household.
It's true.
1.6 if you round that up. So I think that is part of it. But I did see BC Transit had a announcement last week that they are seeing ridership return to equal to pre-pandemic levels, which is really great. And it's that whole piece that we need to just keep building transportation that's sustainable within our communities.
Exactly. And a lot of bikes, a lot of people riding all kinds of things around, Segways, skateboards, you name it. Every day I'm seeing some new mode of transportation.
Well, and if you look at the photo caption page in that section, I mean, it is all about Capital Bike and that bike transportation system that we have, and the great work that's happening with Capital Bike. They received a grant through our investment readiness program, so it is about that multimodal aspect of our community. So I think that.
And I think electric bikes are changing everything too. So we've touched on this. We've come to the end of our grading system, and is there anything else you want to add about how Vital Signs has sort of touched on shaping attitudes, actions, and policy in our region? We touched on a little bit in the beginning. Is there anything we haven't talked about in that area?
So we do use it internally and as that, but we do know that organizations use it across the region, so that's important. But we will be having a Vital conversation coming up now that we've launched this. Now we're in those talks about what will that look like, what is it this year, all those type of pieces, and watch for details about the Rising Economy Conference in 2024.
You bet.
But I think that one of the keys and one of the best examples, if I can just tell a quick story, is around the food distribution center. And so that started with the Where is Your Next Meal Coming from Vital Signs in 2013. And what came out of that was a lot of talks. There was groups that were already doing some work in this area, including Rotary and some others, and really bringing the groups together and coming towards a common purpose. And that led to the Supermarket Summit, and then in 2017, the selection of the food distribution center location in Esquimalt. 2019, that facility was bought with funding from the province of BC, among others. And last week on Friday, we were at the facility for the opening of the Kitchen Connect program, which is there to be able to support farmers and be able to look at, Ty, who is one of the key farmers in getting this done and in this inspiration for this center, he was talking about how he's going to be able to take his tomatoes and be able to find ways to preserve them and keep them around longer and find some new streams for funding for him. So it's something that this is a center that, for the Victoria Foundation's journey, started with Vital Signs, and it started then pulling people together, and those that were working in the space, those that were thinking about it, all that type of piece. And now it's a reality. And it started with 4,000 pounds of food coming in a day from Thrifty Foods. Now there's 8,000 to 12,000 pounds of food a day that come in to the center and are sent out through different means, including there's Chef Chris there, who makes it for different groups downtown. And if you've ever had a chance to tour it or that, you wouldn't know that it was reclaimed food. You wouldn't know that this is food that couldn't be sold.
No.
And I'm just always amazed. But that is one example of how Vital Signs has really shifted something that was a hopeful dream of how do we create a more food secure region to change. And is there more work to do? Definitely. This doesn't mean that the journey is done, and there is more work to do, as you see in different areas. But it is something that I think is a great example of where we can really use Vital Signs as a launching point for some of this
I
work.
love that, from hope to change. Well, that's all the time we have for today. I really want to thank you, Jonathon Dyck of the Victoria Foundation, for your insights. Remind us again where people can read vital signs or pick up copies.
So there's copies all around the community, but also if you go to our website at victoriafoundation.bc.ca, it is available there.
That's absolutely great. And thank you to our listeners. You can tune in to the Rising Economy podcast on CHEK's podcast network or anywhere you tune into your favorite podcasts, including Spotify. Finally, our Rising Economy podcasts are our way of keeping important conversations about our economy going all year, leading up to our 4th annual Rising Economy Conference, March 6th to 8th, 2024, in Victoria and virtually. Find out more at ourrisingeconomy.ca, and don't forget to pick up your copy of Vital Signs. Thanks, Jonathon.
Thanks so much, Carrie.
Bye-bye.
This podcast is brought to you by South Island Prosperity Partnership. Learn more at southislandprosperity.ca.